Hello everyone, and welcome back to DMG. Today I have a teardown of a Barracuda 7200.10. Now this may not be a very interesting drive at all, nor a very good one, but what makes it worth saving is the IDE connector. You see, this is a 300 gigabyte drive on IDE. IDE, given its age, most of IDE drives are in the megabytes, like multiple megabytes to about 80 gigabyte range. So finding a big IDE drive like this can be kind of hard. I believe the largest capacity drive that was ever made on the IDE interface was actually 750 gigabytes. And the 7200.10 series was also the series that was from, but it was the last series of drives Seagate offered with IDE as well as SATA. So although this is not a particularly good drive, its IDE connector makes it maybe worth opening it up and seeing what went wrong. It just won't spin up. I'll see if it's just a total motor failure, or maybe it's just a controller board thing and it's not giving power to the motor like we saw with that old Caviar several years ago. I don't quite know how it died. It just died in its sleep. It was just sitting in my drawer doing nothing. I pulled it out to install an operating system on it to use for an upcoming project that may or may not get a video, and it just would not spin up. I will find out hopefully what went wrong and perhaps even fix it. Now 300 gigabytes is above the platter density size where I can just run it open for a long time, so I will have to be a little more careful than I usually am with IDE drives, which I can typically, because of their low capacity, a couple pieces of dust won't hurt them. So in my relatively clean room, I can just work on them open for several minutes without too much of an issue. Well, the nearest computer I found with a Molex connector is actually a half-assembled Packard Bell 486. So there's that. We'll just go ahead and plug this guy in. I recently picked up some beige IEC cables to match all my old computers, and they're pretty nice. Alright, here goes nothing. Well, and speaking of nothing, thing is, with this drive, I don't want to spin the platter too aggressively because it's a landing zone drive. So that means if I spin it too hard, the head could kind of jump a little and scratch the platter, and that's clearly not what I want. Now, if it's not like SCSI where it needs a signal to spin up, but I don't know, maybe this drive is different. Maybe it wants an IDE connection. Oh, that is not keyed. Fun fact, IDE did not used to have the bump on it. So I'm just gonna hope that's the right way. It's gonna be pretty clear if it isn't. Yeah. Wow, that's very dead. So that's leading me to think we definitely have a controller board failure. Because typically, with these drives, if there's just a small motor problem and you just spin it, if you just spin the platters a little bit, often they'll just revive magically. Let's see, other way. Just last shot. Okay, so the computer knew that the IDE drive was plugged in backwards. So clearly there's some sort of communication between the drive and the motherboard. But there's not any obvious burn marks on the controller or anything, or really anything else, or anything at all that would make me think that the controller itself has failed. So, controller board swap. What I'm about to do is not something that you should do. This is a 300 gigabyte drive. This is a 320 gigabyte drive. They are from the same series, but the controller boards are not at all the same, as you can see. Not just because one is SATA and one is IDE, but because the whole damn board is different. However, if there is a failure of the controller board, swapping it out for the wrong one, even though it is the wrong one, should at least get the platters to spin, because it won't initialize firmware and get the drive to actually work because it's the wrong drive. However, what it will do is provide power to the motor. So I have a feeling that's what failed on this drive. Let's see, are the pins where the heads contact at least the same? Yes, they are. So the pins where it touches the head are at least in the same position, and same for the motor. So, oh god, this feels so wrong. I've done controller board swaps before, but converting an IDE drive to SATA with the wrong controller board that's not at all meant for that model is not something I can say I have done. I'll screw in the head screw just for good measure. These drives tend to like that screwed in. That wasn't the reason it wasn't spinning up, obviously, but just to eliminate all variables. Now that we have a SATA drive made out of our IDE drive, I could go get a power supply that's not from 1987, but no, that's not what I'm gonna do. Molex to SATA time. If this actually works, I will laugh so hard. Oh my god. That actually worked. So the issue was the controller board was not giving power to the motor. Oh, there's a fly over here. Let me kill it with the hard drive. Yeah, I don't think he's alive anymore. But the issue was the controller board was not powering the motor. And let me just show. And it actually tries to read. That is fascinating. So even with the wrong controller board, it tries to read the drive. So that means it's initializing firmware to some degree, but I don't think that these are interchangeable. So the drive will think that it's a 320, and I don't think it'll actually write. But that doesn't mean that it isn't worth trying. I am going to just put in a couple screws for stabilization and pop this in my workstation. Pop our new 320 gigabyte, 300 gigabyte IDE SATA drive into my SATA caddy. Alright. Oh, hello. 4 terabyte Hitachi drive. Forgot that I left that in the SAS caddy. I heard it spin up. Camera probably didn't pick it up, but it's running. Okay, so as I had predicted, it doesn't show up on the computer because, well, it's the wrong controller board, so it's not identifying the drive correctly. So, just buying a new controller board, however, is a lot easier and cheaper than buying a new drive, so I'm glad it was that easy of a fix. What I'm going to do now, though, is put the IDE controller board on the SATA drive to see if this one is indeed dead, because if the IDE controller board with the Molex power spins up the motor on the SATA drive, then that is a problem, because that means this board actually does work, and it just doesn't work with the IDE drive that it originated from for whatever reason. Great, okay, no signs of life. So that means that the error was, like I'm 99.8% sure, that the only issue was that this controller board is just totally cooked. Now all that remains is swapping the SATA controller board back to my SATA drive, because I actually have data on it. These older Seagate controller boards have entirely too many screws. You really just need 3, maybe 4. But I'm not complaining. Overbuilding is always good. If only they'd built the rest of the hard drive equally well, that would have been nice. Alright, well now we have a working 320 gig drive again, and we've diagnosed the error, the issue with our 300 gig IDE. So, yeah, I just need to buy a new controller board, and as aforementioned, that is easy. Interestingly enough, I should mention this. These 7200.10 drives don't use separate cache and controller. This is like a, I guess, SoC isn't the right word, but it's a chip that has both the cache and the controller integrated onto it. It's not uncommon on drives at this age. A couple others, like the WD-RE3 series, also did that, but you definitely don't see it anymore, so it seemed worth pointing that out. That's where I'm going to wrap up this video. I hope this was helpful, informative, funny, or just entertaining. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time.